all Satanists have been abused as children. All. There is not, I can't imagine any normal person going into something so horrific, vile, disgusting, so violent, humiliating, could possibly, it's impossible.
Jim Phillips was a doctor of medicine with the police force before he opened his own private practice in Birmingham. Lately, he's more and more focused on victims of abuse in early childhood. He's achieved tremendous results with people who've been regarded hopeless cases within traditional psychotherapy. Perhaps he's most well known for his treatment of patients with multiple personality disorder.
I can remember just waking up on an altar, completely naked, with symbols painted on them. They cut my feet and dripped the blood into a bowl of some sort, and then mixed it with somebody else's blood, and then proceeded to bit down my neck. Then, after that, 5 or 10 people took turns to urinate, and shit on me, for want of a better word. And then I was bugging.
I would be telephoned by someone to say, we've got a young woman who thinks she's had a baby but can't quite remember. Is this possible? Is it possible for things to happen to you that you've forgotten and you're beginning to remember? So I would say, it is possible, let's talk about it. And gradually the story would emerge of a young woman in her 20s who may have had anything up to 6 babies as a young woman between the ages of, or young girl, between the ages of 11, 12, up to their early 20s, which were aborted and used for sacrifice in a variety of ways in covens. Their best to get out by telling people in ways that don't involve words. They try to communicate to teachers, they try to show pictures, they try to tell friends, they may ring call lines, telephone lines, and they won't tell you what's happening. They will often say, hello, I'm fine.
Bedell carves in his own arm. Emily has overdosed more than 600 times and she's just swallowed 80 aspirins.
You took them when you were out? Yeah. Dr. Phillips, you better phone for an ambulance. 80 aspirin while she was out at the chemist.
Here, Steve presses a needle right into his leg to physically block the pain buried in his memory.
And somebody handed me a dagger and said, finish him. I objected, and then I had a knife forced into my throat. And I know for a fact that if I hadn't have done what they said, then I'd have been swapping places with him. So I stabbed him in the throat. They weren't happy with that. I had to continue doing it and doing it and doing it. After that was done, they forced me to actually suck the open wound and suck the blood out of the cut.
All types of treatment or therapy must begin with someone listening to the victim and someone who is willing to believe what they're told. Here at the Jupiter Trust, people that have been exposed to incest, physical abuse and ritual abuse are all together in the same therapy group.
The first thing I think they feel is that there are people like me. There are people that have been abused. In other words, they start losing that stigmatization. They're not the only ones in the world that have been buggered and all those horrific things.
A light or an inner core in the person that's been abused. A core that, even if it's unseen, very often seems to be surprisingly undamaged. Jim Phillips means that everyone, once exposed to something as destructive as ritual abuse, always develops MPD, multiple personality disorder. He thinks that MPD is often diagnosed as schizophrenia or a psychopathic disorder. Dr. Phillips' view is that MPD is actually a form of protection for this inner core.
The development of multiple personality disorder is a type of auto-hypnosis where if a child's mind is subjected to psychotrauma, abuse, the child's normal mind, what I call the virgin mind, just cannot cope with that psychic trauma. And the child's defense mechanism is to develop an imaginary friend who will take on that abuse. That imaginary friend, if the abuse continues, which it usually does, which it always does in case of MPD, develops into a personality.
As long as the abuse continues, the child will develop more and more different personalities. Eventually, the child can disappear behind a protective wall that will handle the surrounding world. This is what it can look like when a young woman's different personalities succeed each other in a letter to her therapist.
Patients don't know they have multiple personality disorder. They have voices in their heads, so they think they're mad. They have memory lapses. They have different styles of handwriting. They'll see clothes in their wardrobes that they don't remember buying. They'll see in their bank accounts. Won't remember how on earth they wrote that check. And this is a typical sort of story.
You can actually talk to each of these personalities, and it will actually say, you know I'm not real. I know I'm really a part of that person. And we discover when we talk to and we work with each one individually that they were literally created out of a severe traumatic time in that person's life.
These personalities have different personalities per se. They may be violent, they may be depressed, they may be sexualized, they may be anorexic, they may be bulimic, they may be self-mutilators. The personalities often are similar to the abusers.
44 or 45, and 90% of them were violent. I had about 10 that were satanic. Like, each had a set thing to help me handle, just so I wouldn't have to put up with it.
It's very helpful to get a map of the situation. So they will sometimes draw a whole family of people inside them. These can be male and female. I mean, this kind of situation whereby you have, for example, a male character called Captain Courageous. He takes care of a lot of the little children here. We have Big Mummy, and she takes care of a lot of the teenagers, two of whom are holding babies. And this told us the story that somewhere in her life, as a young teenager, she'd actually been pregnant twice and lost those babies. When at the age of 14 years old, she was aborted and had to eat part of her newborn infant. This was so terrible that she split at this point and became another character.